Ryan had seen Sandra in her yard at night multiple times, but he had no clue what she was up to. They used to be pretty tight, chatting over their garden fence when the weather was good, but he barely saw her around lately. Before we continue, please take some time to subscribe to Dailydose, like, and share this video with your friends. He barely saw her during the day. Lately, Ryan only saw his neighbor sneaking into her garden when it got dark. At first, he didn't think much of it, but as time went on, he saw her more and more at dusk. He started to wonder if something was wrong. Ryan figured it'd be super awkward to just go up to her and ask what she was doing, especially since they hadn't talked in a while. Plus, Sandra was obviously trying not to be seen. So he assumed she wanted to keep whatever she was doing on the down low. Instead, he decided to take a sneakier approach. He put down the trash bag he was about to take out and turned off the kitchen lights so Sandra wouldn't see him. Even though she was busy with what she was doing, she glanced around from time to time, probably to make sure no one could see her. Ryan was determined not to get caught in the act of spying. If Sandra spotted him, she might jump to the conclusion that he's some kind of weird stalker. His curiosity was undeniably getting the best of him after all. It was hard to ignore how suspicious she was acting. Ryan spied on her from the window, but he couldn't see exactly what she was doing. He wasn't close enough, and it was too dark to distinguish a human shape moving. Suddenly, he remembered he had binoculars somewhere. They might help him see better. He rummaged around and finally found them in a kitchen drawer. He'd been looking for a few minutes, so he had to hustle. Sandra would probably finish her secret mission soon and head back inside. Ryan raced to the window and was relieved to see she was still out there. Peering through his binoculars, he caught a clear view of her down on her knees, meticulously digging into the grass with a petite gardening shovel. It struck him as particularly odd, especially given that the outside was engulfed in the pitch darkness of the night. Ryan was even more intrigued by what Sandra was up to. Middle of the night, and there she was, in her garden, digging away. And the weirdest part, this wasn't her first time doing this. Ryan knew it wasn't his business, but he just couldn't help himself. He desperately wanted to know what she was doing there. So instead of leaving her alone and putting down the binoculars, he grabbed a chair and pulled it to the window to sit comfortably while keeping an eye on his neighbor. Eventually, Ryan noticed a bag next to her on the ground. Sandra opened it and pulled something out, and when Ryan saw what it was, he nearly jumped out of his skin. It was a glass jar, and it was full of money. Ryan couldn't believe his eyes as he watched his neighbor place the jar in the hole she had just dug, and slowly but surely, Sandra closed the hole until it completely disappeared. Ryan was like, is she really burying cash in her backyard? And if so, why? He couldn't think of any logical reason, or maybe there wasn't one and she'd just gone cuckoo. Either way, he was determined to find out more. Of course, Ryan didn't plan to go to her house and directly ask her what she was doing. Instead, he had another idea. He planned to spy on her from his kitchen to try to understand what she was doing and, more importantly, why she was doing it. So, the next night, once it was pitch black outside, Ryan parked himself by his kitchen window. Lights off, binoculars ready. He was set. He waited and waited, but Sandra was a no-show. The following nights, the same thing happened. Ryan waited by the window to see if she would show up in the garden, but she didn't. 2 weeks went by and Sandra only came out twice. That's when Ryan realized something. She wasn't burying the jars every day, but every week. Ryan wondered what her deal was. Was this some weird way of saving money, or was she hiding it from someone specific? He wasn't sure, but he'd also noticed something else odd about Sandra. She was always on the move. She was at home every day, but she left it at least once an hour, and she never stayed very long. Moreover, she also had mysterious visitors. Cars stopped in front of her house, and people Ryan didn't know came in and out all the time. As Ryan studied these mysterious visitors, he got a bad feeling. Something wasn't adding up, and he couldn't shake off the creepy vibes. He started to recognize one of the men who always came to Sandra's, and even if he didn't want to judge someone based on their appearance, the stranger really didn't seem like a nice guy. Who was this guy with Sandra? He looked super shady and didn't seem like someone she'd be friends with. Something was off, and Ryan didn't want to get tangled up in it. There was a big difference between spying on Sandra from afar and physically getting involved in the situation, at least until one evening when he heard something that completely changed his mind. It was Thursday again. The day Sandra usually did her jar-burying thing, Ryan was back at it, spying from the kitchen with binoculars in hand. That Thursday had been very hot, and the young man had left the window open to cool the room he was in. Even during the night, the temperature remained high. And that's when he heard that strange noise. At first, Ryan thought there was a big cat meowing in his yard, or maybe some nocturnal bird making odd noises. If that was it, it would probably stop soon. But the noise didn't stop, and soon, after looking a little more, Ryan realized what that sound was. The discovery took him by surprise, and he abruptly moved away from the window. It was Sandra, and she was crying. Ryan watched her wipe away big tears as she kept digging another hole. She looked devastated. It was a heartbreaking scene. Suddenly, something overcame Ryan, and he opened the door, rushed outside, and went towards the fence separating the gardens. Once he got there, he realized what he had just done and immediately regretted his decision. Sandra, you okay?" he asked. The moment she heard him, she quickly hid the money jar behind her back. She probably didn't know he'd seen everything. Then she looked at him with a look full of anger. "What are you doing here? Get out!" she yelled. Ryan didn't expect that reaction at all, and he was surprised. He hadn't done anything wrong, after all. But he didn't give up, staying by the fence until Sandra finally opened up. She spilled the beans. She'd lost her job and ended up working for some wanted criminal. She had to handle all her dirty work to earn money to support herself, but lately her new boss was taking more money than was initially agreed upon.